Is this working?
Hello?
Good afternoon, Tom.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
I am fine. And yourself?
Well, thank you.
Oh, good. Good afternoon, Dr. Hill.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I am fine. Happy belated Mother's Day.
And happy Mother's Day to you too, and all the mothers.
As you all can clearly see, I'm here with all my task force friends and some wonderful UG staff, however, I will mention that.
Are they all invisible?
I won't answer that because I'll incriminate myself. I'm just testing the mic. Can someone online please say hello or introduce themselves?
Hello, you're fine.
Commissioner, can you say that again, please?
I can hear you. Is that good?
Yes, we can hear you all. There's just a little static here in the room. It is 4 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started. And hello, everyone. It is May already. Can we believe that? We've got a couple folks here in this conference room and several online. As always, I think it's a good practice just to go around the room, both virtually and in person, and introduce everybody. So I'm Tom Lally with Hillcrest Transitional Housing.
I am Wes McCain with the Public Health Department.
Hello, Wendy Green with Legal.
Dr. Hill, if you could start.
Sure, I'm Ellen Hill with the Justice and Equity Coalition.
I'm Andrea Tapia with the Kansas City, Kansas Housing Authority.
Greg Take with Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network and Vision Homes.
And Dwayne Bright, Fuse Executive Fellow and Housing Coordinator for the UG.
La Howler, Program Coordinator for Livable Neighborhoods.
Susila Jones, Executive Director with Crosslines.
I'm Randy Kallstrom with Wyandotte Behavioral Health Network.
Rob Santel with Crosslines.
Rachel Russell with Crosslines Community Outreach.
Did we miss anyone?
Melissa
Myra-
Buckley, Commissioner.
And Myra Romero Furman from Burritos to Go.
Brian, you want to introduce yourself, please?
So Brian Perez, I am the Vista, currently assigned as a mayor's task force liaison. So I'll be helping to facilitate this and relaying anything back to the mayor as needed.
Well, welcome everybody. We do have a couple things, couple updates on our focus areas. Andrea, do you want to give us an update on the systemic change focus area, please?
I do. About a week or two ago, we sent out a proposal, and I'm hoping everybody was able to review that proposal. We met the systemic change task. Our committee met to talk about areas where we saw need. And what we did was we spoke amongst ourselves, talked about different areas and different barriers that individuals living in Wyandotte County encounter when looking for housing, and how we can help to increase the number of landlords to participate. And in order to get more by getting more landlords onto the program, also increase the number of housing stock for those who are looking for housing. So we went through a long list of barriers that people face. Some of those barriers were application fees, security deposits, deposits for utilities, transportation, finding housing that can be rented, and landlords who are willing to rent housing to those who are receiving subsidy or those who just can't afford high rental rates. And so we decided that we wanted, rather than try to fix everything, we decided that we were going to focus on two particular areas that we find that could address some of those other needs here in Wyandotte County. And so what we said was, what would keep a landlord from participating in providing housing to our housing choice voucher participants or families who are receiving other types of subsidies? What would be some of those things that would keep landlords from wanting to participate? One of the things that we realized was that landlords tend to believe, or some have experienced where someone has lived and rented one of their units and maybe returned it back beyond normal wear and tear. And so those are costs that they incur, that in order to rent the unit again, they have to go in, they have to paint it, do some repairs and things of that sort. So that's a cost that they do incur. Also, we do ask the landlords to look at the amount of rents that they're wanting to charge. And sometimes we will negotiate with landlords and say, is there a way that you can lower the rents in order to provide housing to families who are receiving subsidies? Other things that are barriers for landlords are not understanding the program. You know, they don't understand the housing choice program or other programs that where individuals are receiving subsidy for, and they just need a little more help with understanding that. And so we talked about all of the things on that may prevent landlords or make landlords hesitant from wanting to participate in those programs. And then we also looked at, you know, maybe a liaison for the landlord, someone that they can call and ask questions to, who can guide them through that process. But not only for the landlords, the second thing we looked at is what are the barriers for the individuals who are looking for housing? You know, it's knowing where to go. How does that process look? What rights do they have as tenants during this process? You know, and you know, what's affordable, what's not affordable, things of that sort. And so we said, as a committee, we said, let's try to narrow these things down and address these two things in a way that would be beneficial for our community. And Wes, am I forgetting anything? Would you like to elaborate a little bit more on this?
It depends on, I think you did a great job. It depends on how much you want to go into the landlord risk mitigation fund specifically, if you want to describe that just a little bit, or if,
Yes.
Okay. I can take like a minute and just kind of go through that specifically, because I think the idea is that, Andrea, are we putting this proposal or recommendation to the committee today for consideration in some way?
So I did not get any responses back from the posting of this particular document. I would like to get the input from the rest of the committee and the task force on any recommendations that they may have or any concerns that they may have, because I want everybody to have an opportunity to give input, because we are working together as a full task force to present this, hopefully this proposal to our commissioners. And so I would like everyone to participate, to read through it. You know, there may be some areas that we have not addressed, or there may be some areas that we're asking for that maybe already have been addressed, and we just don't know about that. So I would love everyone's input. I would love for everyone to review this proposal and provide some type of comment, whether that comment is that you agree with it and there are no changes, or that there are some changes that you would like to see happen.
You know, please.
Andrea, are you wanting that for the next month, or do you want to have that done sometime during this meeting?
I would love for it as quickly as possible. It could be during this meeting. They can email me. My email address is, with the other email addresses. If you need my email address, we can make sure to get that sent out. But I would love for everybody to comment, whether that is right now, if you've already read through it, or if you have not read through it and you want to comment, then email us with those comments. But we really would like some input, because this is a full, although we're broken down in committees, we're still working together as a full group to tackle some of the issues that we see here in Wyandotte County. So I would love everyone's input.
Is it possible to share your screen and maybe run through that document?
Yeah, Andrea, if you put it up on your screen, I'm happy to go through it. I have some notes that I put together to just kind of briefly run folks through it. And just to provide some comfort for people, we've gone through this proposal several times. The committee, I think maybe 3 different meetings. There was our CHIP housing team or originally helped put the idea to paper. Then we sent it to the committee. We had some questions, sent it back. There's some edits back. Then we sent some more edits back. So we've gone through it a couple of times, and I feel pretty good about the level of the number of eyeballs. But definitely, Andrea, I think it'd be great to get people's eyes on it during this meeting. And I can do it. I can do it pretty quick if you can share the screen.
Okay,
Ryan,
great.
is it
Let me pull
possible
that
for-
up and
Thank you.
let's shut this down. Okay, let's see.
Just by a show of hands, while she's doing that, how many of you have heard of a landlord risk mitigation fund, either here in the room or on the call? All right, I see some hands here. So, landlord
Can you
risk
see my
mitigation.
screen?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay.
So, and you could probably pump up that Zoom just a little bit so folks can see it. But so this is a proposal that the CHIP housing team and our subcommittee put together. A landlord risk mitigation fund is essentially fancy phrase for landlord insurance. It's insurance for the landlord to be able to, like Andrea was talking about, damages to the unit, eviction costs, non-payment of rent, things like that, that a lot of landlords hesitate to get into housing programs and join housing programs because they're worried, okay, well, I have a relationship with this one client, but what happens if something goes south with this one client? Who's going to help me out? This helps answer that question. And one of the things, just from a high level view, we really liked about this is it works. It's already starts on step 2 with one of the major barriers to housing, which is cost, right? That's one of the biggest things, is how expensive housing is. And one of the nice things about this program is if we do it right, it has the potential to increase the number of people who are housed, because we have vouchers that are left on the table. But the only cost, because the housing is already there, right? The vouchers are already paid for. So it's a matter of getting more landlords into the system. So if we can get more landlords in, we can house more people with existing resources where the housing's already paid for. So it's really attractive in that way. So I won't repeat what Andrea's already said. A lot of what she said's there on page 1. You can see here, basically it's a fund. People who are landlords in the eligible programs can utilize it and enroll. It could be a tool for recruitment for our housing programs into it, both the housing authorities, Section 8 housing vouchers, other programs that we run. Here on page 2, I think what we'd kind of point out is there was actually just I think it was a public health journal did a big research study comparing households who were enrolled in voucher programs versus households who were not enrolled in voucher programs. Okay, so does that actually help the outcomes of the families and the kids? And it showed a significant help to them. And you can see on that in that additional findings paragraph there, it talks about the different parts of it, which I think is really encouraging. It's sort of common sense that it would for have people who have a stable funding source for their housing, but it was nice to see that researchers did that, looked at it, and it does help out in lots of ways. You can see here, it's a proposal, so there's a budget attached to this on page 4, where I'll get, which I'll get to, but part of the cost of this pilot is a position, because you need some staff capacity to recruit landlords into the program, let them know about the service. It's a relationship heavy position. So it's someone who has to build those relationships, which takes time. And so that's why there's a staff person who's engaged in that. The other major cost of the proposal is the fund. I mean, just making sure we have enough money to pay out claims. And there's a process, you have to go out and, identify the damages, talk about you know, like the process, if you submit something to home insurance and someone comes out and takes a look, it's roughly similar. Of course, it's a little different. One of the nice things about this program too, on that long-term goals and process measures, is because we're really talking about some pretty easily quantifiable things, number of landlords that are in programs, number of vouchers that are being used. These things are all tracked already. So it's pretty easy to measure the return on investment for this. So if we were to invest the proposed, you know, number here, which is 250,000 over 2 years, you know, we can really easily along the way see how well we're doing, and then at the end of it see, okay, has this made a difference? You know, we've invested this? Do we have more landlords in the program? Do we have more vouchers being utilized? Which is great. I really like that as a part of this. Yeah, good long-term goals, process measures, evaluation measures. And then this last page is the budget. And you can see here we've kind of laid out the salary and benefits, and then the cost of the landlord risk mitigation fund. You know, it'll be interesting to see with this pilot if we would use all of that 100,000. That's one of the things that's really interesting. So it's going to help people. The insurance is going to help people. That's what other communities have seen, is that it helps people get engaged. How much we actually pay out, you know, the fund pays out to people, is an open question. And so that would be interesting to see if, you know, how much of that fund we would use. So, you know, that's the model. I think, Andrea, the idea is that we would get some kind of confirmation from this group that this is a proposal that people like, that they think it would help to accomplish the goals of this group. And then at some point, Andrea was talking about presenting this in some form or fashion to the commission for consideration. But this is the proposal that our committee has put in front of everybody. So, and happy to answer any questions. And Andrea, if you have anything else that you want to add.
I think you covered everything.
Kaylee has a question, I believe.
I just kind of want to know if there's a way to verify the quality of living conditions that we're dedicating some of this money to. I don't know if you're aware, but right now we don't have a single rental license inspection in the county. We have no rental dedicated inspector at all for what we currently have. And there are some significant ways that the state of Kansas has handicapped our inspection process to where it makes it very difficult to get anything kind of done. And so with that being said, with us not having even just a regular county inspector, where do we kind of balance the optics of this, saying we need this person, but we don't, it's not a priority to fulfill the position that we already have in rental license, but we do want to prioritize the landlord partner. I feel like that's kind of a difficult thing to navigate. And then I also, if we're spending this kind of money on reimbursing, we need to make sure that there's really some accountability. My best friend's a property manager here in the county, and I live in a not so well run apartment building with the landlord frequently taking money from voucher programs, Saver, all these other ones. And with that happening, the follow-up and accountability that these repairs that they're getting money for is not being done correctly, or there's things that they've already back charged a previous tenant for out of a deposit, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to maybe talk a little bit about how that's going to play out too, as far as inspection, and how do we decide who is going to be able to get that money as part of that? What's the reputation? What does that look like? Because we have thousands and thousands of unlicensed properties in this county. If we think the 150 short-term rentals are bad, wait till we see the thousands of unlicensed rental units we don't have. And I would like to just know what that process looks like before some of this stuff goes, maybe before a public hearing, because those questions will be asked for sure.
Those are great questions. I'm wondering, some of the folks here who provide vouchers, could you speak a little bit to, is there a quality
I would say for
assurance
the,
process?
for the housing choice vouchers, there is a housing quality standards inspection that is done before the individuals move in. There has to be an initial inspection, and it must pass the initial inspection before subsidy can be paid on that particular unit. Also, if it's a housing choice voucher participant, there is also a annual inspection each year, as long as they're in that unit, that gets inspected. So there has to be a past initial inspection, and there has to be annual inspections. Also, you can request a complaint inspection if the person is living in the household and there are things that need to be fixed. They can request a complaint inspection, and it has to be inspected, as well as 24-hour inspections also. And I can go, Kelly, a little bit more in depth on that process and what that looks like if you'd like. I will feel free to reach out to you and tell you how that goes.
And Andrea, I'm very well aware of that. I'm actually a general contractor as well who's rehabbed several properties that have gone through voucher inspections. But depending on the program, I will say that I've had case managers, and not everybody's reached out to me and said, "Oh, we just need to get someone in there. They'll take it. We don't care what you have open. We'll skip inspections." I've seen that happen time and time again. So I know that that's there. I just want to know how we fix some of those process issues with some of our voucher coordinators, as everyone is just short-staffed.
Well, I would say that we have inspectors that inspect those units, and we don't want to just put someone into a unit that doesn't pass HQS inspection just to get them in there. We never want to place anybody in a unit that way. So if that is occurring and you know of someone who has placed someone in a unit that did not pass HQS inspection, I'd like to know about that.
Right. Yeah, this is probably a year and a half ago, and I know some of that probably just was a result of COVID chaos. But at the same time, I know people who have marked properties inspected when they haven't, and so on and so forth. So I guess I'm just really more interested in what does this look like? How does this pan out to the people who are providing that service, especially when we don't have anybody who's doing it for just general landlord rental stuff. And as some of these funds and stuff are actually running out of money completely.
Maybe a side conversation we can have right now is, since this is really our first formal recommendation from the task force, this is brand new to all of us, I think, in terms of how do we get this in front of Mayor Garner and the commissioners. So Andrea and Dr. Hill, I know you met with the mayor not too long ago. We have Commissioner Bynum. We do have representation from UG Legal and UG City Administrator's Office. So if we could talk about that process of how we get it from this conversation at the task force and make that formal recommendation to the 9th floor, I think that'd be a beneficial conversation as we go forward. So Andrea and Dr. Hill, you had a meeting with the mayor not too long ago. Can you maybe give some bullet points on what those recommendations were for proceeding with recommendations?
Well, during the conversation, one of the things that we wanted to make sure occurred is that we first asked the mayor what that process looks like. How do we want to do that process? And second, we wanted to make sure that when doing the process that we have everyone on board within our own committee. We did not want to start the process of reaching out to the commissioners without having input from the whole task force, because it's important to have input from the whole task force. But one of the things that the mayor suggested was that we prepare it in a professional, of course, format. We want to make sure that the format that we're presenting is not in the format that you're looking at right now. Those are just key bullet points, but we want to make sure that we're presenting a professional proposal. And during that process, we want to make sure that when we're going to speak in front of the commission, we have to, of course, make sure that we get on the agenda. so that we can present the proposal to the commission. But the most important part, and I'll say it again, and I know I've said this several times, is that we want to make sure that the full task force has had an opportunity to provide input before we present it to the county commission.
Andrea, is okay if I just expand a little bit more on that meeting?
You can.
Okay, thank you. Another piece that the mayor suggested was if there were any other models in the country that possibly handled this situation or included these types of projects that were successful. Everything from shelter to warming center to affordable housing. Are there any models? This was one of the questions he asked. And could there be a full-blown proposal that included all of that, including the litigation piece with landlords and all of that? So is that correct? And I know Brian Perez was also in that meeting, but I do remember him mentioning it could be a lot bigger than just this one piece that we had right here. But am I on the right track, Andrea? Okay, great. And so that's a piece of what I heard. And we also talked about possible visiting different places in the country, different cities that have these models. So another piece of what we've done is we've contacted, well, let me say, Mount Carmel Redevelopment with Andra Penn and Pam Smart, Randy Colson with Wyandotte Inc., along with Cecilia Jones and with Crosslines. And Rod was even at that last meeting we were at to talk about places that we could visit. So right now we had 3 different opportunities: Humankind, which is in Wichita, the Beehive, which is in Casey Mo, and then Randy mentioned a place in Lawrence, Kansas, but I didn't have a name for that, for possible opportunities where we could visit. In Wichita, we have a couple dates, June 15th, which Andrea could not meet that day, but June the 20th was another possible date. And we did include Commissioner Bynum also in that opportunity to visit. So those are just other ideas and suggestions that came out of the meeting with the mayor.
Can you elaborate, Dr. Hill, on specifically what that, when you talk about going to visit, that it's not on the landlord risk mitigation proposal, but it's for other areas?
Sure. So the landlord mitigation piece was just a little bit separate from the piece that we were, because we're also looking at what do we do about the homeless, the warming center. And so that's where we were also talking about it being a more inclusive piece, not just the litigation for that, but also including the warming center and the homeless here in Wyandotte County. And so that was another whole piece that could be included in the proposal, or it could be separate. But if we did a whole piece around that, that's what we were looking at, a more inclusive piece from
Dr.
the
Hill.
task force.
I totally understand the thought behind that. It reminds me, Andrea, of what we talked about in our committee, which is the kind of complexity of all of the different facets of this and how the more you kind of bundle all these things together, the more it just takes a long time. There's a lot of consensus process. Certainly we need a large housing plan. That's definitely needed. But as far as from our subcommittee and what we were kind of coming forth with, we thought with the capacity we had, it was easier for us to kind of take things one at a time. Not that we wouldn't consider all of them, but just it would be challenging for us to propose all of them at once just because of the number of things. So it's not that we wouldn't consider all those things that the mayor mentioned, but maybe it helps our workflow as a committee to kind of just think about one thing at a time, just because it's, we're all kind of working on other things. That was kind of what our committee thought about the process.
Wes, thank you for that. And that's a great point. So in front of us, we do have a proposal from the Systemic Change Focus Area. Just a reminder, and I hate to be the killjoy on this, but just a reminder that this task force has absolutely no authority or responsibility in terms of fiduciary finance or budget. We have no dollars to allocate. So I am in full support of this recommendation for landlord risk mitigation. But just so that everyone is very, very clear, once we formally recommend this to the mayor and the county commissioners, it is then in their hands. But I do want an opportunity for Unified Government Legal and County Administrator's Office to maybe weigh in on what that process would look like for this task force to make that formal recommendation to the 9th floor.
This is Wendy Green with legal. Really what we just need to do is get it on an agenda for a standing committee first, I believe. And then then you could go to the full commission. Standing committee is probably the best way to go at first. And that would be, I would think, Alan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that would be the Neighborhood Community Development Standing Committee. I would think that would be the best way, and either legal can assist you in doing that, or trying to think who else. Brian might even, if Brian has a vehicle to do that through the mayor's office, one of us can help you get that on the agenda.
I was maybe going to suggest that Commissioner Bynum, since she's now involved in this, is probably also an appropriate sort of conduit for getting an item onto the agenda. And she is part of that subcommittee.
Thank you. Thank you. So Andrea, do you want to maybe do one last overview of the recommendation from the Systemic Change Focus Area? And then we can take a little bit more conversation and discussion, and then we could have that formal vote whether to accept it and recommend moving it to the mayor's office and the commissioner's office.
So I would like for them to review it. If you want to send me comments anytime, I am willing to accept those comments. If you have any questions or comments right now, that would be great. But if we can move forward with that vote, that would be even better.
Yeah, Ms. Unhoused in County Administrator's Office, and I apologize, I'm sort of coming into this at the back end of that. So I guess just to help maybe catch me up a little bit on this, and maybe this is appropriate for the discussion before the standing committee and not here, that's fine, but just trying to catch up on who is envisioned to administer the fund. Is it Housing Authority? Is it a UG department? Is it a nonprofit? Is there a structure? I guess that's more of kind of a structure question.
Andrea, and those that were on the Systemic Change Focus Area, would you like to answer that, please? And Rachel has her hand up.
Do we want Rachel, are you answering the question or are you asking a question?
I was going to answer the question.
Okay.
Yeah. So when this initially was being discussed in the CHIP Safe and Affordable Housing Action Team, we had gone into conversations with United Way to be the holder of the fund, just knowing their background in our community and their ability to coordinate those types of things. And then we had discussions prior to the transition of staff for the individual to be housed in the livable neighborhoods department in the NRC. And we had talked to Greg Talkin about that as well, as kind of being, since that's where rental licensing and all of those things were housed, that it would kind of all be in that one location. Since then, we have explored, based on Ms. Tapia's past experience with things similar to this, and having a coordinator, we had discussed potentially that person being housed at the housing authority. And so I think there have been lots of ideas and talks around this, but I think many of us were hoping to get it to a concrete stage before we made final decisions on that. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Ms. Kayla had just briefly come on board. She is aware of the conversations, but we didn't want to kind of live in this world of potential, because it has been a potential for about 18 months now. And so excited to see this work move forward. But I think those are pieces that we would definitely, all of us who have been in these conversations, have to come back to the table and make sure that it's kind of an agreed upon and works for everyone's situation based on the conversations we're having now.
What is the will of the task force? Would you? Oh, yes. Who has their hand up? I can't see that far.
That's Ms. Penn. One question that I had that I received multiple times, and I apologize, Ms. Tapia, I didn't get a kickback, but maybe it also is in spam on your side. A lot of the metrics are currently targeted at Section 8 programs. And so we wanted to confirm that we were moving forward with COC funded projects as a part of this pilot. I know we talked about in the subcommittee a controlled group, but I think there is a lot of I don't even want to say use the term concern or those types of things, but just wanting to make sure that those most vulnerable in our community through programs such as PSH programs. I think Rachel fell off from Kim Wilson Housing, but I wanted to clear that before this is an item we take to the commission so that everyone has that understanding.
Yes, we were looking for a control group that's easily that can be easily tracked. And we all know, I know when you start talking about the continuum of care type of program, the COC, when you're talking about the COC, you want to make sure that you're tracking the success of it. You're looking for the long-term tracking as well, not just the short-term tracking and the changes that we're seeing, such as income changes. You're seeing how long they're housed, once they're housed, and was the landlord liaison and the landlords working together, was it able to provide a long-term housing for the individuals who are participating. And so one of the concerns was, how would we track that? Who would track it? Who could easily track that information to show any areas of improvement from, the baseline up? And so if that can be done, which, COC is really good at tracking information, I don't see why COC and or the Housing Choice Voucher Program could not benefit from that. And that COC does capture, like you said, your most at-risk and hard to house families.
Andrea, if I could just speak to that about tracking the information. The agencies that are tasked and have those COC funds do have to track a lot of that information, and through the HMIS, I do think that it would benefit the community and clients who are, especially clients who are very vulnerable and unhoused, to be able to access the funds for landlords, because they are a particularly difficult group with their challenges to convince landlords to take a chance on.
I agree.
Yeah, and just real quick, Rachel, I think on these metrics, I read that there is the intent to do that. I mean, Section 8 is the only named housing program in here, but on all the metrics, I see and other housing programs and other housing programs and other housing programs. And I wonder if, just getting the baseline, it just like a couple folks were saying would be helpful, because we've talked about the housing authority numbers a lot, because that's been the topic that's come up a lot. But if we had a baseline, I think we could easily kind of go from something more generic to something more specific in here.
Ms. Penn has had her hand raised patiently, so Ms. Penn.
I think you're muted, Ms. Penn.
Ms. Penn, you're muted.
We're unable to hear you, Ms. Penn.
Try it now.
I apologize. We're still unable to hear you.
Ms. Penn, we're having difficulty hearing you. Maybe if you could type any information or questions you might have in the chat, we could respond that way.
There was a
Sorry
couple
for the inconvenience.
currently where Commissioner Bynum was saying that, yeah, should be able to help get that on the agenda. If you just advise what month you would like to do so moving forward.
We've had a lot of wonderful conversation. What is the will of the systemic change focus area? Would you like to move forward with recommending the proposal today, or would you like to maybe go back and refine it based upon some of the conversations of today? Andrea, I'm gonna ask you that question directly.
I would say I would like to move forward with it. We can make some changes before we present it. So we did receive good input today, but like we discussed in our meetings, we would like to move forward and start with this process and go ahead and vote on it today.
I agree.
Commissioner Bynum, would making a formal recommendation today to move it forward to the commission and the standing commission afford the focus area enough time to make those revisions and come up with the presentation?
Let me look at a calendar real quick as far as when the soonest it might appear on an agenda for neighborhood and community development. The next meeting for that is June 5th, but that might be May 25th for agenda review. I don't know if
This
you
is Wendy
can.
with legal. It would have to be submitted, I believe, by noon on Wednesday of this week.
Okay.
Not week, but this week. I'm sorry, the 24th.
Oh, okay. So we would have time if you wanted to make the June 5 meeting. Is that right, Wendy?
That's correct, Commissioner Bynum.
Okay, so, and I'm happy to make the request. I would make it to Commissioner McKiernan, who chairs it, and the mayor. I don't know if you guys can hear me anymore. I've got static now.
We can't hear you.
So my question is, are you asking only for the landlord risk mitigation fund or the whole document?
The whole document.
Okay. And is that what we are asking this group to vote on today? I apologize. I don't know if I seen the document, and I don't know if there's more to the document than just the fund. So I apologize for not being certain.
No, it's just the landlord risk
Oh, okay, gotcha.
mitigation fund.
Oh, okay. So we
Yeah.
could bring that, so that document could be brought forward to the mayor and Commissioner McCarron as what we are asking to place on the agenda. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
This is Evelyn. I'm in favor of moving forward also, and I'm reading the chat with Ms. Penn. She wants to be added as a community partner. Is that correct, Ms. Penn? Can you shake your head? Okay, yeah, all right. So she wants to be added as part of the community, as a community partner on this document. Is that correct?
Yeah, I responded back to her, okay.
Okay, all right, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay, oh, Randy, go ahead.
Randy.
Yeah, I just have a question of clarification. So when we talk about only the landlord mitigation fund, is that including or not including the liaison position?
I want
Yeah.
to include the liaison in with
Right.
this, because it's a very important part of the landlord mitigation process. So that's the most,
Yeah.
that's vital for this particular proposal.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I am very much in agreement, Ms. Tepe. I just wanted to clarify. Tom, I don't know if you're looking for a motion or how you want to do this in terms of formality, but I certainly would support.
Randy, that's a great question. Alan wants to chime in on that.
And this may be a question for Wendy Green, council. So in terms of what would come forward to the commission, it seems like there's two parts of it. There's the sort of the recommendation to establish a fund, and then related but separate is a budgetary ask request. So I'm trying to think of the mechanics of what comes before commission and what commission is being asked to act upon. And is it to express support for the recommendation? There's probably, there's more details, and like we talked about in terms of the mechanics of it. What would be the action being requested to the commission when it appears before them? Because the budget is going to, process is sort of starting now. It will conclude in the August-September timeframe. And so there's not a fund allocation right now kind of thing, but again, that is really maybe a question for Wendy is what does that look like?
That's what I've been trying to think of too. I mean, I think the request would definitely be to establish the fund, but then I think you'd also have to figure out what department are you going to house that in? And then when you do that, they would need to make sure they asked for money for the fund as part of their budget, is how I think it probably would play out. I mean, that's just
Our
I don't mean
intent,
that-
the
my head.
original intent is not for the fund to be at the UG. So I want to be clear about that. The intent is that the fund is not housed at the UG just due to the mechanics and the way in which the UG's finances operate. I think we know that there will be long lag times. And so in order for it to work that's why we were considering United Way hosting the fund. And then the other thing the actionable thing is that the UG funds this project. So whether that is this is the project we're going to fund, and I know that there are in some instances an RFP process, and those interested parties can apply to administer this project or this program. That is the outcome that we're looking for. We're looking for them to find the money in the budget to fund this project, but then to also outsource the actual implementation of this project as well.
I think, Rachel, that 100%. That is what I remember. I think no matter what, we do need to put it somewhere in the budget, right? I mean, even if we're going to subaward the funds eventually through an RFP process, it has to be placed in the budget somewhere. So I think that's kind of what they were talking about, is if we're going to be making a request like at the standing committee that this be a priority housing investment that the unified government considered during the budget process or fund during the budget process, then there has to be some kind of decision. Okay, well, even if the majority of the funds go somewhere else, it still has to be managed in some way by some department. And so I think that's kind of what they were talking about.
Let's not overly complicate this. Let's remember that the group that's here is a community group. We are kind of we are under the umbrella unified government. However, we represent a lot in Wyandotte County. And I believe we were tasked with the job to come up with recommendations and solutions to really help our neighbors in need and those that are unhoused. And I think what's before us is exactly that. So I think would a motion and a second and the whole Robert's rules apply for this?
It sure would.
So let's go ahead and do that. Let's have this group move it forward, the recommendation to the 9th floor, and we will trust our administration and legal department and elected officials to do the right thing with our direction. So Andrea, would you like to make a motion to move this proposal forward?
I do. I'd like to make a motion to move this proposal forward.
Is there a second?
Yes.
I would second that motion.
We had a whole bunch. Okay. All those in favor of moving forward the recommendation for the landlord risk mitigation proposal to the standing committee, please signify by saying aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Please signify. Wendy, are we? I think we're good. I think the motion has passed. So congratulations, everyone. And Systemic Change Task Force or Focus Group, thank you so much for all that hard work. This is exciting stuff. Yay. Yeah. All right. It's Good Monday. We did some stuff. I have there's a couple other things on the agenda. Dr. Hill, you had talked about some of the things that the resource committee is looking at. Are there any other areas or any other announcements from your focus area?
No, not at this time. As we had reported previously, we are still trying to figure out the best way to get the word out about all the different resources available here in Wyandotte County, and we're still working on that. So, Greg, would you like to make any, I know you've been working with us pretty closely around that issue. Anything you'd like to say around that, or?
Well, at this point, Pastor Turner and I continue to trade voicemails back and forth, not reaching one another. But once that is done, he sounds like he's in favor of working with us through his coalition of churches to put some information out. But we just keep missing each other for the last 2 weeks we have. So sorry for that.
Okay.
Andre, was there anything else from Systemic Change?
Oh, no, nothing else to report right now.
I think it's always important, since we have all these wonderful folks and agencies represented, to leave a little bit of time for announcements and any opportunities for resource sharing. So if anyone has any announcements of any agency programs coming up or any resource sharing, the floor is open.
Kayla Howard with Livable Neighborhoods. I just wanted to say thanks for those who invited me to be a part of this task force. If there is information or things that need to be shared with the community or you want shared with the community, our office is happy to send out resources and things like that, or have them at our office. We have a weekly e-newsletter that goes out, a Facebook page, and we have monthly meetings with our neighborhood leaders and community members. So feel free to connect with me if you need any information shared out.
Hillcrest may be looking for temporary administrative office space in Wyandotte County. So if anyone has a few offices that they might be willing to sublease, please contact me directly. And just remember that we're a poor little nonprofit. Ladies and gentlemen, any other announcements, any resource sharing?
Tom, one announcement I might make is I may have to decrease my role in this. I just recently applied to be a candidate for the 4th District Commission. So I may have to decrease what I'm doing in this arena, just FYI.
Thank you, Dr. Hill. Ladies and gentlemen, have a good Monday. Thank you for all that you do out in the community.
Thank you.
See y'all.